Welcome to the Crypto and Blockchain Talk.
Hello.
Hey.
Guten Tag.
Aloha.
Hola. Shalom.
Hello.
Namaste.
Ni hao.
Privet.
Hello.
Salut. Yassas.
Salve.
Ciao.
Bonjour. Our podcast talks about the latest trends in the worlds of cryptocurrencies and the blockchain. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Crypto and Blockchain Talk. And yes, I have been on a little break, and actually so has our guest today, Jonathan Dunsmore, founder and principal of Dunsmore Law. We had to take a break because, quite frankly, we work 24/7. So we are now back to cover some very interesting pieces that are in the news. And Jonathan, honestly, there was no one better I can think of to hash out these topics than you. So welcome to Crypto and Blockchain Talk.
You're too kind as always, Aviva. I am honored, and it is always a pleasure to be here. As we discuss all of these topics, I would like to remind our listeners that this is for educational purposes only. This is not investment advice. This is not financial advice. And this is damn sure not legal advice. So don't use it for those purposes and do your own research.
I heartily agree, and it is so great to know that you're a lawyer, Jonathan, because it's so great to have a disclaimer at the very beginning of a show, because nothing like scaring the holy bejesus out of all the listeners. But now that we're talking about laws, we might as well first of all jump into this latest news from the U.S. government, who basically wants to tax crypto transactions to fund their $1 trillion infrastructure package. Now, I'm not going to get into the politics of everything because, quite frankly, I really don't give two shites. But it is interesting in terms of the fact that they have finalized the details for this $1 trillion bipartisan package for infrastructure. And this plan comes with measures to improve tax compliance, as well as ways to specifically improve taxation around cryptocurrencies and crypto assets. And it is very much the case that crypto is on the firing line. And they have a bill which includes, that's within this infrastructure, this $1 trillion infrastructure package. So there's a bill which basically has these measures to increase tax enforcement, which is around the reporting requirements on exchanges and crypto brokerages. And according to this bill, exchanges and crypto brokerages will be required to provide all the details about cryptocurrency transactions equal to or more than $10,000 to the IRS. So before we go any further with talking about these measures, this bill in particular, couldn't somebody just say, oh, okay, well, all I'm going to do then is break down my transactions to $9,999 per transaction, and they'll still just go with it, and then they don't have to report it. I mean, isn't that the case?
Yes and no. So there's already...
Already we're starting with yes and no. I love my life.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is the IRS doesn't mess around. I was just joking with a client earlier, that the one agency that I do not like to tangle with is the IRS. We have no problem going to war against FinCEN or the SEC or CFTC or trying to figure out what these regulations, how to apply them to crypto matters. But the IRS is such a long arm that they can really kind of force policies. That being said, the form, I think it's 8300 by the IRS already requires the reporting of transactions over $10,000. And so the way that people tried to get around this, right, was doing those, like you said, $9,999 transactions or $9,000 transactions or, some kind of derivative thereof. And what happens is because our systems are not stupid anymore, they're able to flag these transactions. They're able to see them, or they're supposed to see them, at least in bigger banks and, compliance and regulatory SARS reports. Does that happen all the time? Absolutely not. We've seen that over the last decade where everyone from Deutsche to Wells Fargo and Bank of America have been involved in failing to comply with some sort of SARS. So all of that in consideration, what it's asking in this bill, without the politics involved, is basically creating a broker out of everyone, meaning that any of these kind of transactions have to almost be reported in some way, especially if they go through a traditional centralized exchange. And while I think that is understandable in some cases, I do think that overall it does become something that is almost impossible to enforce, and it is an unbearable burden on this industry right now. I think the IRS has much bigger fish to go after, literally. There's an estimated, I think it's 80 to 90% of multimillionaires don't pay their taxes because of either tax loopholes or all of these credit lending facilities that take out money that they want and then, loan it back at absurd interest rates. And so all of their money is made in the stock market, which as it should be. But we don't have the kind of equitable distribution of those stocks that kind of, the tides lift all boats. I think it's a terrible idea, and I think that the people that put it forward are misaligned.
Going back to what you just said, you kind of glazed over it. You said that the bill essentially redefines the definition of broker to include everyone who's involved in the crypto industry, which of course includes miners and validators. And that is in itself, I think, quite interesting in terms that a lot of people who are mining, I mean, they're making way above that amount. And the amount of people who are mining, I mean, there's a lot of them. And one of the things that they love about the crypto sphere is the fact that it's anonymous and, they were making money quite happily, thank you very much, by not reporting it. This is quite, I think, a big step in really making people show their hand. One of the things about crypto is the anonymity behind it for good or for bad, and that totally disappears when you have this. I mean, am I getting that wrong?
No, that's exactly right. And I think that's where the major policy flaw is in this transaction, is they are absolutely and fundamentally mistaken in this approach. And so what they're looking at is they're trying to regulate the U.S. market when it comes to crypto. Well, to be fair, the U.S. market is still the largest market in the world. Our biggest competitor would be China, and China absolutely hates cryptocurrency because it provides the exact freedom in which you were describing.
Unless it's their own crypto.
But that's totally different totalitarian take on it, right? To be able to monitor every single transaction someone does is what their dystopian future looks like. But in that same breath, if you do have a decentralized network, a truly decentralized network, and not a centralized network run by the People's Republic of China, you have a situation in which you can transact, whether that's millions, billions, or possibly even trillions eventually, of dollars worth of assets all over the world. And I think what that ultimately lends to is, a possible reduction of the U.S. dollar, which, people say, what is the U.S. dollar backed by? And I jokingly and have said multiple times, the largest military in the world. And so not to get, nationalistic on it, of course, but there's a question of, does having Bitcoin out there, all these DeFi solutions, cause harm to the American economy or the European economy or all these other kind of things? And I think the general answer is no. I think overall there is a question of, having Venezuelans or Cubans or other oppressed people having access to arguably what is a global currency, right? Something that could be provided on a blockchain that could not be seized by your government. And there's, an argument to be had that if they've got you in person, they've got, a seizure. But that being said, if you can get away with having Bitcoin or some type of blockchain asset that no one knows about, and you're in this, deteriorating, developing country, then you could become in a position to overtake whatever authoritarian regime you have there. I mean, there are stories left and right of Venezuelans leaving because they have enough Bitcoin to be able to buy their way out. I think that is ultimately where we start seeing the freedom and the economic value of the blockchain, but it has to find a fertile ground to grow. And I think because the United States, even though we have a bunch of laws and regulations, we can figure it out in a way that doesn't make it, to where it's this ridiculous taxable, everything's a reportable transaction, or there's some type of totality to, whatever is going on that needs to be tattled on by the government. I think that leads to a situation where we're going to absolutely be fundamentally screwed, especially when it comes to proof of stake, because everything is moving to proof of stake. And while it's absolutely terrible to not know in some cases, who's in your pool, right? The overall opportunity for people who, like I said, are in these developing worlds and can stake and do recognize the value and the freedom of that is something that society as a globe is going to have to realize, because it's inevitable. I truly think that, just like the internet, this part of human evolution is inevitable.
They're forecasting that this could bring in as much as 28 billion in added tax revenue, because of course, especially if the broker definition, which as we already said, not only would include miners and validators, it pretty much includes everyone. It would cover the DeFi markets, all their participants, such as liquidity providers, all the DEXs, all the decentralized exchanges. I mean, you just name it, everybody's in this thing. So, and they're saying 28 billion in revenue. But the other thing is that people are arguing that there's going to be this potential for surveillance, because the form that's needed requires brokers to collect, to basically record all customer data, including their including personal details with with phone numbers and their addresses and inside leg measurement and blood type. So, and by the way, the last two were just a joke. But there's a lot of people who are railing against this, and one of the things is that they are saying, and because you're a lawyer, I definitely want your take on this. They're saying that's going to place a burden on civil rights if they go through with this bill, which, by the way, apparently is highly likely to pass. So this bill looks like it's going to pass, Jonathan. But what people are saying is that it's going to put a burden on civil rights, and Article 4 places limits on surveillance without a warrant. So can you just speak to that in your legalese?
Well, I think that they have some real hurdles there. I mean, there's always been this restriction, which is why they're implementing it for, an existing rule. It's not like they're changing the rules. They're modifying them in the sense that, they do become a broker and therefore are subject to this rule, right? And that's where, like you said, the DeFi solutions and everything else get really complicated, because there is an unknown when it comes to DeFi. You don't know who the other person is. They could be Frankenstein's monster for all you know, or they could just be the little old lady down the street. And is that terrifying? Absolutely. But in the same way that we don't go after people until they've committed a crime, that's the same thing that should happen with transactions like this. And because the U.S. has been slow to adopt and kind of help regulate this market, especially when it comes to, even though, FinCEN has been involved in these kind of things, they haven't really put through guidance on what some of this means. And they have not really kind of cracked heads when it came to really big offenders. And some of those people who are out there kind of flouting rules and actively trying to circumvent the rules are, the first people that I believe the government should go after. Now, that being said, there is absolutely no fundamental underpinnings for why they should do this other than to try to create a tax base. And as I said earlier, the IRS already has a bunch of billions and billions of dollars that it doesn't collect already. And so this is, in my humble opinion, a way for the banks to try to get one over on crypto and slow down the adoption. Once again, it all kind of boils down to politics, but is this going to stop crypto? Absolutely not. Is there a way to enforce it? Absolutely not. Does this mean DEXs and things are going to shut down? There's a possibility, but if I know, and I think I do, most people in this industry, they're just going to find a bigger, better, and more aggressive way to get what they want. And if that's a Web3 solution where the government can't shut it down or no one can shut it down, that's the future that we're looking at anyway, for better or worse. Decentralization doesn't just mean cryptocurrency. It does mean the World Wide Web and access to all kinds of crazy things. That's where we're going to, as a global society, kind of figure out, what is the best and worst of us.
Talking about the best and worst of us, that's a brilliant segue to my next topic, which is about Binance. And Binance's founder, CZ, whose full name is Changpeng Zhao, said he was willing to step down whenever he finds a successor who can, quote unquote, do a better job. Because apparently both he and Binance are under pressure from regulators around the world. Because they don't like the idea that Binance has thrived in a very unregulated environment, and not just thrived, but they're making the rules as they go, and making a hella lot of money on the way. And, so Zhao made the remarks after Binance came under scrutiny from regulators saying that their cryptocurrency exchanges are used for, or I should say, excuse me, allegedly could be used for money. See, I learned that from you, Jonathan. I learned from the best. Allegedly.
Well done.
Yep. Thank you. Allegedly could be used for money laundering, or that investors fall victim to scams and runaway bets. I personally know people who have actually invested into cryptocurrencies which are on Binance, which are absolute scams. And what's even worse is that Binance has marketed them. In other words, what they've done is they've emailed people and said, if you enter into this contest, et cetera, and you put 10,000 of this, you buy 10,000 of this particular crypto coin or shit coin or whatever, you're going to be entered into this contest. So Binance has absolutely. And I mean, I've gotten these emails myself and I'm like, what the hell coin is this? And I look into it. I'm like, who would invest in this? And believe me, because Binance says so, and people actually respect Binance, which, by the way, is a centralized exchange. In other words, the money is funneling up to one place. I think it's going to become very serious very soon. Something is just giving me that hint. And I think that right now, it looks like CZ is trying to build the vehicle that will jettison him out of where he is, because I think that he realizes he's in danger. Am I reading that wrong? Or sorry, allegedly in danger. Am I reading that wrong, Jonathan? Or do you think I'm somewhere in the hot zone?
I think you're somewhere in the hot zone. I mean, I have no direct knowledge of specifically they could be seeing on the inside. I do think there's some really brilliant people in Binance and that are working with Binance. But my problem has been, as like you have clearly articulated, that there is a lot of shadiness going on. And so what you've seen basically a cohort of whether it's regulators or governments all kind of ganging up on Binance CZ because they see the opportunity. And does that mean that it is likely to, develop into something? Well, I think in most cases, probably not. I think that, Binance is a big enough organization that it's going to be able to weather the storm, and whether that means, they set up offshore where somebody's going to give them some type of safe haven and, depending on the deposits and things of that nature, are people granted temporary citizenship and all these abilities to trade and things to shut down? The answer could be yes. But I do think that depending on how the DOJ inquiry goes, things could be shaken up.
Well, I've got some interesting information about that. But
yeah.
before you go any further, I just want to give you two pieces of data that will make you you'll need to change your knickers after you hear this. So Binance has grown in trading volumes almost tenfold in the last year to 668 billion last month. Okay,
yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay, so did you hear that number? And by the way, like I said, unregulated and making the rules. Okay, 668 billion. Okay, I think at this point, CZ can not only build that vehicle to get him away from this situation, I think he can actually go and build his own planet. The next thing is that...
Well, so let's put that in comparison, right? The market cap for JP Morgan is only like 400, maybe 450 billion. So it's bigger than JP Morgan. It's bigger than the largest bank in the United States. And that's why there is this crackdown. There is this, this is an issue kind of thing. But like I said, when it comes to the totality of it, when it comes to thinking globally and not just, as a citizen of the United States or as a European citizen or a Japanese citizen, when you think about it globally, are there ways to, essentially still access the internet and have these Web3 developments that are, for the most part, there is no ability to shut it down. And I think that, for better or worse, the answer is yes. Now, could there be some type of criminal inquiry, like I said, like the DOJ's inquiry, where they try to, hunt this guy down and find him, and not to compare him to Osama bin Laden, but that's, not a comparison. But, it took the U.S. several decades to finally to get their hands on Osama bin Laden. And that's a situation in which, they were highly motivated, right? And so is there going to be a situation where China or Russia or, North Korea hides CZ or some other Caribbean nation and says, we're not going to extradite him to the U.S. to face money laundering crimes or whatever, the U.S. kind of builds against him? I think the absolute answer could be yes. Or is it a situation where, their lawyers come to the conclusion that maybe we've made some mistakes and we'll try our best to clean them up and we'll pay $100 million fine and continue on with business as, most U.S. market participants do? I think that could be as highly likely as any situation we have here before us.
Well, Britain's financial watchdog barred Binance from carrying out any regulated activities. So,
and there's still Binance, there's still British people or UK Knights involved on Binance. That's the problem.
Absolutely. It was downloaded in the UK 1.8 million times in 2021 and 2.2 million times in total. So think about that. So 2.2 million times in total, but 1.8 million of that was so far in 2021. So, but I'm going to tell you something that's absolutely hysterical. I read this and I just cried. So basically, what Binance has been doing is they've been writing letters to different U.S. agencies soliciting praise, and the Department of Justice has basically told them to stop it. Did you know that? The U.S. Justice Department told Binance, stop asking for praise and stop asking all these agencies to write you love letters saying how great you are. So that also kind of shows me that, they are a little afraid that the U.S. government is nailing together a coffin that is about his size. So, I mean, it's absolutely, I just thought to myself, this is the time where you literally go to the agencies and go, what do you want us to do? And we'll do it. Because there's no point there is a point in running. I mean, look, they still haven't found Ruya Ignatova from OneCoin, have they? So, I mean, she's still on the run. When you have that kind of money, you can rebuild your whole freaking face. You can rebuild your whole body. Hell, you can make yourself look like an alien. And if you really want to see some of those pictures, just Google it and you'll see what some freaky people have done to their bodies. But I'm not joking. I mean, if you really want to disappear, you can disappear in this day and age, believe it or not. The requests have bothered the Department of Justice so much that they sent a letter to the FBI, the Secret Service, and the IRS, and a lot of other agencies demanding that their agents stop signing letters to Binance, and this is from an insider, yeah? And so this is a sign of big-time tension between the U.S. regulators across the board and Binance, which, as we already said, with the amount of money they're taking in, it just may well be more than a slap on the ass. So, yeah, any thoughts on that, Jonathan?
I do think there are a lot of thoughts that I won't really share out loud, but I think that people have to be careful when it comes to acting as a foreign agent. I think they should be monitored and paid attention to. You can find yourself in serious criminal situations or with a criminal complaint on that, and I highly recommend that before you contact anyone as a quote-unquote foreigner in the U.S. or outside of the U.S. for a government agency to act on your behalf. That being said, I do think that because CZ and Binance have quite a mountain ahead of them, that they are right in trying to find as many allies as possible. But I do think that the best way to make their lives easier is to clean up their house.
Yeah, and it's very much confirmed that the Justice Department and the IRS they are focusing on money laundering and tax offenses. And by the way, if all of our listeners want to see something with a glass of wine in one hand and soft music in the background, just put on Whale Alert. Just look at Whale Alert either on, yeah, you know what I mean, Jonathan, on Twitter, or go to their website. I'm a huge fan. And look at where money, I mean, the amounts of money being sent into Binance. I mean, in the billions on a daily basis. It's freaking hysterical. Thailand filed just last month a criminal complaint against Binance for operating without a license. So now you see what other people are saying, and this is what I really want your opinion on, is that other people are saying that it's debatable whether Binance is really legally required to cooperate with U.S. investigations, okay? Because what CZ has always purported is that their company, quote unquote, lacks a true corporate headquarters, okay? And so apparently their argument is going to be, and this article, don't know really, the information that I have, I mean, it doesn't really confirm that they're already putting together a defense, but it looks like that there is a kind of defense being formulated right now that, Binance is going to be saying, hey, we lack a true corporate headquarter. We don't really have one place we're located, so we don't need to report to anyone in the U.S. So, Jonathan, can I have your take on that?
I think that is the most insane take ever, right? And that's what, even I have problems with that. There's a legal theory called business nexus, and that's what, is used for tax purposes, business purposes, governance purposes of, are you doing business there? Are you holding yourself out to do business there? With Binance America, basically a subsidiary there, with everything else that Binance is claim they've digitally fenced off Americans. That's not true. You know what I mean? You just hop on a VPN, hypothetically, and join Binance. Is it a situation in which their argument could be, oh, we didn't intend to be there? Of course, that's always everybody's argument, but that argument is very weak, and I would not recommend anybody trying to say that they are not doing business in the U.S. when they clearly have business in the U.S. or hold themselves out or hold a subsidiary out to be in the U.S. I think that's where it gets really kind of dangerous. But with all that being said, I think that it's going to be an interesting rest of 2021.
Well, I can tell you who is all in it together. That's all of the citizens of El Salvador. Because El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele, said in a national address that basically Bitcoin will become legal tender on September 7th, which is literally just around the block. And also, by the way, its use is optional. Nobody will receive Bitcoin if they don't want it. And if someone receives a payment in Bitcoin, they can choose automatically to receive it in dollars. And salaries and pensions will still continue to be paid in U.S. dollars. But what do you think, the fact that Bitcoin, BTC, is going to become legal tender in a country on September 7th, what do you think that's going to, first of all, and by the way, I know we're doing the crystal ball, but what do you think that's going to do to the market cap in the first instance? And in the second instance, how do you think the other countries in the world are going to feel about accepting payments from anyone who is sending them from an El Salvador-based financial house? Because even though El Salvador is ranked as one of the countries with the lowest index of money laundering, apparently the reason why that is because they protect, according to another article, they basically don't do anything about money laundering. So that's the reason for their low indices, is because apparently, according to this article, which I know it sounds nonsensical, but it does make sense, apparently the reason why they have such a low rating is because they don't do anything about it. And because they don't do anything about it, there's no stats that show that they're fighting this. Therefore, it gives them a low indices. Now, I don't know if that's the case, but basically the head of El Salvador's financial regulatory agency has instructed banks not to close accounts of suspected money launderers. I don't know if you know this. And this comes from an article from Insight into Crime, where the head of El Salvador's financial system, Hector Gustavo Villatoro, released a memo forbidding banks from severing commercial ties with alleged financial criminals. Now, so going back to my question, if other countries know that El Salvador isn't very harsh on penalizing people for entertaining or participating in money laundering, how do you think that El Salvador, now that they accept Bitcoin, which of course is, it's one of the conduits for money laundering, how do you think other countries will feel about doing financial transactions with them?
I think that that's a really good question. And one, I think that Bitcoin is going to be around in some form or fashion for the foreseeable future. With the World Bank and the IMF, basically telling El Salvador not to do this, that this is a bad idea, that they're not going to help with infrastructure and all of these other kind of things. I think this shows the lack of understanding of not only Bitcoin, but also blockchain in general and the technology. And that's the problem that we have. And so what you have is a situation in El Salvador where you have a young 30-something-year-old president who is tired of his country suffering and now believes that he's found a way forward. Because mind you, El Salvador deals with U.S. dollars. Their base currency, their national currency is USD.
Yeah.
And so when you have a situation like that, where you're basically beholden to another government, you have this position where, while I haven't seen anything done and I see all this corruption with our own quote-unquote dollar that is actually someone else's dollar. And so you start trying to find the money, which is, somewhat what the IRS is doing, rightfully or wrongfully. And what they're trying to chase after, arguably, CZ for. Can't really fault the method, but you can fault the means. And so with that, you have this position where if the IMF and the World Bank came to El Salvador and said, let's figure this out. Let's try to make El Salvador a country that, digital currency is readily accepted, has the infrastructure, has the bandwidth, has, the transactionality to actually facilitate this as a true means of currency. And then, I think that would be a really good use case. If El Salvador wants to be the testing ground and the beta test for whether it's Bitcoin as a national currency or whether it's, a combination of Bitcoin and US dollars, I think that there needs to be an evolving discussion on that. I do think overall having some type of blockchain-based asset as part of a digital currency profile for a country is probably a good idea, whether that's a stable asset or CBDC or anything like that. We can get into that discussion probably in a couple more months. But when it comes to, the realization that the technology is not going away, this is something that's going to stay and evolve. And because it's a necessity, just like the internet was and the information on the internet, we've got to make people smarter. And that's a tough nut to crack, and that's something that even in the U.S. we still haven't done a very good job at it, and that's something that we need to change. And as we evolve and as we continue to develop as a global society, I think that we'll find the more access to information and the more comprehensive access to information, the better things may be. If El Salvador fails, Bitcoin is going to suffer. If El Salvador is not able to get the infrastructure up to make blockchain-based assets a part of its, digital currency, we're all going to suffer. All of the work that everybody's put into this is going to hurt. The same way if this bill passes, in the U.S. Congress, it's going to hurt. Things are going to continue to make the path difficult. Does that mean it's going to stop? Does that mean it's going to eventually fall and crumble? I don't think so. I don't think we're at that point yet. And I don't think we're going to get to that point for some time. And I think as long as we continue to evolve these assets and make bigger and better, stronger blockchains, then we're going to find ourselves in a space where you're going to have money that can't be corrupted, or you're going to have money that is truly immutable, or you're going to have data that is, verifiable. And so, when you get to those kind of solutions, you are going to build a better world, and you are going to be able to understand what are the bad places out there and what are the good places.
The thing is that you have a lot of people in this space and a lot of places where those people entrench themselves. Like we said, even CZ is saying, they're not based in one place. Of course, it's very interesting to see that, yes, there are countries really investing into Bitcoin for a number of reasons. They're looking at Bitcoin as another payment method for their country. We talked about Miami in a podcast where Miami is looking at actually using Bitcoin to pay their own governmental employees. We're looking at people and places around the world who are really looking at Bitcoin as a payment mechanism for their global companies. One of them being, of course, Jeff Bezos. Now, there was a rumor circulating earlier last week, or could have been even the week before, that Amazon was going to be taking not only Bitcoin as a method of payment, but they were also going to be creating their own cryptocurrency. And this rumor, because it turned out that the company did respond, they said this is a rumor, and they had no plans to integrate Bitcoin payments on their Amazon platform. But what they said was that what they want to do is explore the possibilities of crypto on Amazon, which, by the way, is a way of basically saying yes, in my opinion. This is a way of Amazon saying, yes, we are looking at accepting crypto. We are looking at even perhaps making our own cryptocurrency. I mean, I'm not being funny, but why not? He's probably looking at what's going on with... who's that other idiot? He's probably looking at what's going on with Elon Musk and Tesla, because as we all know, Tesla said they were going to now reevaluate their position and reaccepting Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies in terms of payment and blah, blah, blah. So Amazon probably will be taking, in my opinion, and of course I know nothing. I don't have any inside information. It's just a feeling. And if my listeners have been listening and paying attention, my feeling is actually good enough. They play a lot of games, Amazon, with their press releases and the way that they address the media. But what they also did, which they obviously knew was going to cause a frisson of interest in the media space, they put out a job description because they apparently wanted to find somebody who could join their company who is an expert in cryptocurrencies, which is how all these rumors started. If they didn't want the rumors to start, I'm not being funny. This is Jeff Bezos we're talking about. All he has to do is turn to his right-hand man and say, can you just go find me a dude who's really good at crypto? Hey, I heard about that chick who has a podcast called Crypto and Blockchain Talk. Can you just go ring her up and ask her if she wants to join our... But what I'm saying is the following, not that they've asked. But what I'm saying is the following. It's a little bit, it's so cheesy, in my opinion, just to get a little bit of headline in the news. And I also think to bump up some stock prices, because the minute that somebody thinks that someone's going into crypto, it does bump up the stock price. Just like we saw when people added the word Bitcoin, when Bitcoins first started to come out, anything that had the word Bitcoin or blockchain in it, the price, their stock prices went up. I mean, there was a company, I think on Long Island, I might have this wrong, who actually, it was just an iced tea company. They called themselves either like the Bitcoin iced tea company or the blockchain iced tea company, and their share prices soared. I mean, people didn't even know what the hell that meant, but they invested into it. But now you have Jack Dorsey. Oh, Jack Dorsey, so many things I want to say here. But you have Jack Dorsey now going out and saying to his investors, he's gone out and said to his investors, he's gone out and made a public statement that Bitcoin's going to be a huge part of the company's future. Of course, Dorsey launched a 23.6 million Bitcoin fund with Jay-Z. He's got Square, his other company, which has invested hundreds of millions of US dollars, hundreds and hundreds of millions of US dollars into Bitcoin. And as we know, that one's kind of kicked him in the nuts a little bit, that investment, the Square investment, because of course the Bitcoin price has not been too healthy as of late. But of course, the minute they start spewing these things, Amazon and Twitter, the minute they start saying this, they're doing everything they can to kind of, in my opinion, pump this price up. And like I said, there's a lot more to talk about when we're talking about Jack Dorsey, and I want to do a separate special on that one. But can I just have, before we end this podcast, can I have just your take, your comment on what I've just said about Amazon and Twitter? Go for it.
Amazon already uses blockchain on the back end, so almost all major companies do. Almost all Fortune 500 companies have looked into some sort of blockchain. It's not the front end coins and all the things that we see. Generally speaking, there's some type of blockchain already being deployed by most of these companies. If they don't have their own internal development consultants, they've got people on the outside. And so I think anybody who's actively exploring this space is probably doing the right thing. I'm not a fan of Bezos, Dorsey, Elon, Bezos. All of these people are, heavily involved in this space in one way or another in ways that may or may not be public. But I say the more the merrier, as long as they don't muck it up.
Well, yeah, I just hope they don't muck it up. And I really hope that, if they're going to integrate payments and if they're going to do this, it's kind of like, I think they're in a catch-22, these companies, these massive companies, when they're investing in Bitcoin. And just to make it clear, a lot of companies are using blockchain. More and more companies are using blockchain because it is a better way to manage a company without, hands down. And we can also go back and we can also do a refresher, which I think it's actually in the podcasting schedule, to do a refresher on what blockchain is and how companies will benefit from that. And no one is decrying that. No one is arguing in any way, shape, or form against using blockchain. But I just feel when Bitcoin is, you have most people in the world, they're going out there and they're buying little bits of Bitcoin. Yeah, they're buying small amounts to them. Yeah. But then you have companies who are like MicroStrategy, Tesla, Square, you have all these companies. The list is longer than my arms and your arms and everything else put together. There's 21 million Bitcoins. After that, that's pretty much it. You add up all these major investments, and yes, we're still talking about fractions of the entire ecosystem, but you still have the ability to sway the ecosystem. It might be still not the majority or the significant amount in terms of the entirety of the number of Bitcoin that is out there. But believe me, when somebody, as we've already talked about on other podcasts, when somebody like Elon starts talking up Bitcoin or talking down Bitcoin, the minute he starts doing that, he drags the marketplace with him. And that's the problem I think I have with people like Elon, with people like Jack Dorsey, in that they shouldn't wear their heart on their sleeve so much when it comes to stuff like this, because it is still early days. And I don't think they understand the impact of some people in this world who are very, 60 US dollars, millions, if not billions of people in this world live on literally $3 a month. They are living on the average salary. I think I read the other day, it may have been in Bangladesh, in this one area of Bangladesh, was 43 US dollars a month. Okay. 43 US dollars a month. Talked about El Salvador. There's a lot of people who are buying into this where, if you're going to drag down something by major percentages, yes, it may not be a big deal for you, but it is for somebody else. So it's all great to talk something up, but then you really have to make sure that you're implementing it. So if you're going to say that you're going to start doing something and implementing it, then you can't talk it down. So for instance, when Elon Musk said, yes, we're going to start taking this Bitcoin, and then the price started to go up like crazy. Well, and of course, when that happened, all these people, some of them very poor, said, oh, something great's going to happen. I want to be part of this. And then, of course, he goes out with another quote saying, yeah, it's not really worth this much. Do you remember that?
All together, we've got to act like it and prepare for it. And we've got to, call out people when they act badly and do better, because we can't be the current system. The current system is broken, which is why Bitcoin and Satoshi Nakamoto came around and changed it.
Listen, Jonathan, we're going to dive into this a lot deeper in another podcast, but I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking to me about these topics that are in the news. Thank you so much for taking time out of your valuable schedule to spend it with me and talk about this and have our listeners learn from you.
It is always an honor and a pleasure to speak with you, and I encourage everyone out there to listen to these podcasts.
Thanks again, Jonathan. I would like to thank everyone for tuning into this week's edition of Crypto and Blockchain Talk. I would love for you to please tell your friends and family to download us on a myriad of podcasting platforms. The full list is on cryptoandblockchaintalk.com, but we are on every conceivable podcasting platform there is out there, including iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud, Verbal. You name it, we're on there. If you don't happen to see us on the list that's on cryptoandblockchaintalk.com, please just type us into Google, and I'm sure that you will find we're on one of the podcasting platforms that is local to you. Furthermore, these podcasts are played 24/7 on our sister radio station, Crypto 24 Radio. Crypto 24 Radio plays around the world 24/7, 365. We love to hear from you directly, so if you would like to email us, please email us at education@savvydigital.com. That's education@savvy, S-A-V-I-I, digital.com. Furthermore, we do have our regular social media platforms of Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. But like I said, we want to hear from you directly, so please email us. What I want to say now is that I don't think you realize just how much we love having you as our listener. We cannot tell you how much we appreciate it and how we love the fact that you take time out of your busy schedule to tune into us. So please be safe, take care, and goodbye for now.